Welcome to today's edition of Daytime Dialogues. It's my great pleasure to welcome today one of my very best friends, Rabbi Elazar Muskin. Rabbi Muskin has been the Rav at a shul which is affectionately known as Yik, but it's the Young Israel of Century City in Los Angeles, one of the foremost shuls in America, and he has been at its head beginning next month for 35 years. He built it from a little shulkalim that was just starting into a massive organization that provides services for hundreds of families and just continues to grow. He's one of the rabbis we believe is one of the leaders of our community, so it's a pleasure to have him. He's also, of course, as all good rabbis who are friends, a past president of the RCA, and before that, a past president of the RCC, which is the California rabbinical body as well. It's a pleasure, Rabbi Muskin. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, so Rabbi Muskin, I know that you have Chicago roots. In fact, the real, you'll excuse me, Elazar Muskin was your grandfather's Zatzal, who was a Rosh Yeshiva and a Rav at our Yeshiva and also a Rav in Chicago, and you're named for him. Can you tell us a little bit about your grandfather so people can understand Chicago history?
So anybody on this, listening to this conversation will go Muskin, but if they knew my grandfather, and I don't think there are too many that still are alive, but if they knew him, they might have called him Rabbi Muskin. My grandmother, may she rest in peace, used to answer the phone saying, "This is Rebbitzin Muskin. Would you like to speak to Rabbi Mushkin?" My grandfather was a Litvak, a real Slabotka Musmach. He came to America, I believe, in 1910. My grandparents met Rabbi Epstein, Ephraim Epstein, Rabbi Moshe Mordechai Epstein, the Rosh Yeshiva in Slabotka. His brother was a Rav in Chicago and took him under his wings. And he was the Shadchan that made the shidduch between my grandmother, who lived in Cincinnati. She was a grad, and my grandfather. And they got married in 1916. My father, who was a Rav for 40 years in Cleveland, who was their oldest child, my father was number one, was the Bechor. He was born in 1918. So our roots go back to the south side. He was the Rav of the Shul, the Beis Medrash HaGadol on the south side. There's a book of Chicago Judaism there. There's a whole picture of the shul. It was an enormous shul.
Moshe Kushner Zatzal did that, and with the picture of the shul. And the shul today, after that, Rabbi Beryl Wine's father had the shul, Reb Zev Wine.
Not the same shul. I don't think the same.
It wasn't
shul.
On the south side when it moved north.
Yeah, it wasn't on
north. Right, it was not on the south side. And no.
Rabbi Fassman used to tell me story. Rabbi Fassman Zichrono Livrachama, when he lived here, he moved at the end of his life to LA because he had a son and a daughter living here. So when Rabbi Fassman used to come and see to the Rabbanu Shem meetings and see me, he would tell me stories about my grandfather. His first shtella, Rabbi Oscar Fassman's first shtella in Rabbanus was the overflow Yamim Noraim in my grandfather's shul.
Wow.
Yeah. Cute story.
Your family in Chicago, one of your uncles and my late father-in-law were in Bnei Akiva together, Shomer Dati in those days. The Muskin family has strong roots in Chicago, and then you left town. But you've done amazing things. So Los Angeles today, we hear in the news, California's not in the greatest of situations with COVID. Is shul still meeting? Are you still in person?
Yes, we're very strict about where we meet. We meet, well, it's California, it's LA, so you can meet outside, though it's cool in the morning. We're talking about, mid 40s and low 50s in the morning when we davening, and that's cold for us. That's really cold for us, because during the day it's going to get up to 70s. So that's a big span of change in weather. But we're meeting outside. All of our minyanim are outside. Our shul and similar shuls to us are meeting outside. We're not going inside.
Really? During Yom Noraim, everything was outside also?
Everything was outside. We had 10 or 11 different locations for the Yomim Noraim, and they were all outside, including, of course, the backyard of the shul, and different satellite homes gave us their backyards. Yeah.
Amazing. And Los Angeles today, your community, the Pico Robertson area in Los Angeles, it's a growing community. it's complicated because the housing prices are so high for young couples. How
It
do you
just
get
doesn't make sense.
so?
I don't understand it. I don't understand. Many years ago, I was walking home from shul with my wife on a Shabbos morning, and I said, and we were contemplating at that time the expansion of our shul, which we've since done in a beautiful new building. And I was wondering, am I meshuggah? The prices are so expensive. Who am I building this for? Who's going to move into this area? And the truth is that it's amazing because the neighborhood has grown by leaps and bounds. I don't know how. I don't know
The
how.
young people are still coming in?
Still coming in.
Yep.
Our,
I do
our
have to be upfront. My son Avi is a member
a
of your
very
shul.
honored member of our shul.
Yes, he davens in a small minyan in the library, which has a very interesting name. If I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken, they refer to it as the curmudgeon minyan. But
Yeah, 50 people daven, 50, 60 people daven in the library when before COVID, and Bezrat Hashem soon to return. But yes.
And so young people are still moving into the neighborhood despite the prices. And
Well, what's happening in your neighborhood?
it also happens. We have more, I think we have more rental housing in West Rogers Park. And so young people normally would start out and then they decide if they like the neighborhood or they want to move somewhere else.
So here, there are a number of apartments around the shul area. Just a beautiful new complex just opened up, and just starting to lease a large new complex. So when those are happening, it's great for the neighborhood. And yes, that attracts the young people. But it seems that a large number of them stay in the neighborhood afterwards and move into homes. And don't ask me how they do it. I can't figure it out.
And the number of shuls in the neighborhood keeps on growing.
When
like
I
we have as
came,
well.
when I came in 1986, there was Beth Jacob, which was the large shul in the neighborhood. And there was, I'm talking about Orthodox Mechitza shuls. There was us. We were technically 10 years before a breakaway from Beth Jacob. And there was a small little shul called the Young Israel of Beverly Hills, which wasn't in Beverly Hills. And that was that was east of us towards downtown. And that was it. Those were the three Orthodox shuls in the neighborhood. Today, you have numerous shuls, numerous shtiblach. You have many Sephardic minyanim on the street, Persian shuls. Yeah, you have.
Is it because of the growth of the Orthodox community, or is it because the
In this
Orthodox community likes small little minyanim, the boutique kind of minyanim?
I think it's the growth of this neighborhood. It was, when I first moved in, everybody said everybody knew everybody in this neighborhood. If you were a Shomer Shabbos, you knew the other. Today, that stopped years ago, years and years ago. But there were two large conservative shuls that didn't have mechitza. Let me put it this way: they used to call themselves modern Orthodox, but they didn't have mechitzas. So we would call them, if you will, a conservative shul that became Orthodox about 10 years after I moved in.
So those are shuls like we had in Chicago, the traditional shuls?
That's right.
YU or HTC Musmach?
That's right.
Okay. The kids, which is a picture.
Actually, they were neither YU nor HTC. One was from Tiferes Yerushalayim, and one was a European Rav. So, but both of those shuls put in mechitzas about 10, 15 years after I arrived here. And those are large shuls today.
No, those
are. You have numerous other shuls that have sprung up.
In terms of what goes on in LA today, the education, there's outstanding education. There's a strong Orthodox community. Is the Orthodox community connected with the non-Orthodox community? Are there strong connections through Federation or other things?
Federation, this community is an interesting history, unlike Chicago, as I understand it from our conversations over the years together. This community, the Federation, was established by the Reform and then the Conservative, and really the Orthodox came much, 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 much later to town, and they really never became a major influence in the Federation, though many of us, including myself, have wonderful relationships with the executive vice president of the Federation. But I can't say that we're really a major part of the Federation itself. No, but we do have relationships with the non-Orthodox. Yes.
But does Federation, for example, in LA, reach out specifically to the Orthodox to make sure they're involved, or if the Orthodox reach out to Federation, it works?
You know, interesting. It doesn't. It really it happens, but not like Chicago. Your perspective is a totally different one. That's not what exists here. No, it's not that unity, that sense of the Orthodox have a place at the table in the Federation in Chicago. Isn't that correct? You
Yes.
really do.
No, we do.
You told me that Rav Gedalia Schwartz Zichrono Livracha went on trips that the Federation ran.
Not only go on trips, I had him as the guest speaker for a Federation Malav Malka to raise, and he could make a pitch for Federation better than either of us could do for Kol Nidre.
Yeah, that doesn't exist here. And your schools receive a large endowment from the support from your federation.
Correct.
Not
LA is not like that at all.
No, not at all. No,
And-
not at all.
And in terms of like the RCC and relationships with the non-Orthodox, does that exist at all?
No, the RCC today is a more Haredi rabbinic organization. Again, nothing like the CRC. CRC is the model, in my opinion, of a community rabbinic organization. That I had hoped when I moved here that would become like that. It did not become like that. The RCC is not like the CRC at all.
Basically, besides the weather, Chicago is much better, you're saying?
In many ways, Chicago is a model community. Come
on over, Rabbi.
Yeah, no problem. I understand the South Side is no longer anything.
Want to be. It depends on which part of the South Side. We still have a day school on the South Side, Akiba.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so that's still on the South Side. But and then in terms of the kids from LA, do they go to YU in large numbers, or are they more UCLA?
No, a large percentage go to YU. A nice percentage go to YU. We have a strong presence. When I first came here, it's interesting. When I first came here, EULA graduates did not go to YU, and that bothered me an enormous amount. Why were we sending the kids? And the ultimate experience was to send them to Ivy League. Why were we sending them to Ivy League and not to YU? And that slowly but surely, with influence, and we got YU's presence here much more. I remember speaking to Rabbi Lam, Zichrono Livracha, and making a pitch. One of the first attempts to make a real influence was bringing Dean Bacon here as a scholar in residence at Young Israel of Century City. They had never done that. YU's presence was very limited here. And we slowly but surely made an enormous presence here. And today, Baruch Hashem, some of the best are going to YU and to Stern.
So that's good. And, one of the unusual things that you had on the West Coast was you had a branch of the OU on the West Coast. In fact, several years ago, you would do every winter time, there was a Shabbaton where you would bring people in to speak. I had the privilege of speaking in your shul one year.
Yes, you did.
And
when you were president of the RCA.
Yes, and someone commented to me, your shul must be a bigger building. I guess what I was blasting it out a little bit beyond the walls of the shul. It is a little bit of a bigger building, but your shul, Baruch Hashem, is gorgeous. Your new shul. The old shul is pretty, but the new building is absolutely gorgeous. So, as a Rav in a major metropolitan area, and putting aside COVID, because COVID, Rabbi Muskin and I are going to be talking about COVID tonight on behalf of his shul with some other rabbanim. I'll leave those aside, but as a Rav, major metropolitan area, what are the major issues on your agenda? What are the big issues you have to deal with?
Look, COVID is a major concern, and how we're going to survive, our institutions post-COVID. I'm personally very optimistic. I think that we'll do fine. I think the Orthodox Jewish community, the shul, is a very important institution that's not going to disappear because of the role that it plays in our lives. Even during COVID, we now have daily 3 minyanim at Shacharis. We have a 6 o'clock, a 7 o'clock, and 8 o'clock. And we have, during this entire time, have yet to have a situation where all 3 minyanim haven't met because of a lack of a minyan. So, and then we have a mincha and ma'ariv now it's 4:40 in the afternoon. It was 4:30 just a week ago. You know, and
Well,
we have a strong
The
minyan.
Orthodox schools will come out of this much better than the non-Orthodox. I was
I
speaking
think
to some
so.
of my non-Orthodox colleagues, and they have yet to go back to in-person davening.
That's correct.
Yeah, but
And that's a big problem. So I think we're going to do fine. I think our chevra are looking forward to coming back to a shul where they're able not only to daven, but it's a beit knesset. It is a social element that they're very desperate for, and it's the lifeline of the shul. So I think so.
yeah,
100.
but I'm going to put aside COVID. Pretend for a moment that we were talking a year ago before COVID. What would be the major agenda items as a Rav of a major shul in a major metropolitan area?
You're an educator on top of being a Rav. I think one of our major concerns is how do we impart our hashkafa that it's a viable, wonderful, which we both believe it is, or else we wouldn't be in Rabbanis and in Chinuch, but to the next generation. I think that is the major concern that keeps me up at night. How do we impart it? How do we demonstrate the unity between Torah and Mada, between our Torah lifestyle and living in this world, as we call it, living in the real quote unquote world? That is the major concern.
See, I often tell people that my biggest concern is that we have not been able to be successful in explaining to people that it's not compromise. That the word modern, especially when it comes to shidduchim, is meant as a pejorative. How modern is he? Is another way of saying how not frum is he? But both of us grew up in Bnei Akiva. We grew up in Bnei Akiva. We had certain, advantages. You had a Rabbanosha family. I came from a Balabatisha family, but we were always involved. Are we losing the battle, or are we still strong? Are we losing that battle to a right or a left?
I don't look at it as are we losing or not. I think we have what to impart, and we have, I think, a appropriate, powerful message, and it's going to thrive. It's like
Right,
all
but
experiences. It has ups and downs. I mean, but I think it will thrive. I think there will always be a strong modern Orthodox community. I believe that.
it's interesting. I'm sure you know this at YU today. There are more students in Sci Sims than in Yeshiva College, which happened a couple of years ago. And Yeshiva College being the great center of liberal arts education, and Sci Sims being a professional school towards business. So that even suggested that in the mothership of YU, they're having this problem taking place.
Well, I remember when Rabbi Lam Zichrono Livracha said clearly, and I hear it in my head. I remember, as long as I'm president, there'll never be a business school at Yeshiva University. I remember that vividly. I thought it was a mistake then. I do think that the smartest thing that YU did was create a business school, because businessmen are the ones who are going to support the organization. Fellows who get the BAs from Yeshiva College rarely, do it. It's the businessmen. It's the fellows who go into the real estate and all other entrepreneurial, opportunities that are the ones that are able to underwrite our wonderful dreams. So I think it's good. But yes, the idea of a fusion between a liberal arts education and a Torah education is what yeshiva is all about. And I certainly hope that will thrive.
In LA, one of the big challenges we have in education is most of Jewish education is based on role modeling, on having the role models, whether it's in the world or in the schools. And very often in modern Orthodox schools, the teachers are coming from the Haredi world. Right. And so the role models of authentic Judaism are not the role models that we believe can be. In the schools in LA, do you find that more and
more than ever, that was the history, and 100%. Now more than ever, we are seeing that we are getting wonderful candidates to come out and to become educators that have graduated YC, Yeshiva College, 100%. They're musmachim, they're wonderful Talmidei Chacham. More and more. We need more. There's no question about it. The old problem was the parents Did they want their children to become rabbis or mechanchim in the modern Orthodox? Many didn't. They said, oh no, that's not for my son. That's not, we don't want our daughters to marry rabbis. That was a big problem. Today, some of the best mechanchim in town are graduates of Yeshiva University.
Well, I assume when you were growing up in a Rabbanisha home, to be a Rav was a great privilege and an honor. Generations.
That was in our home. I don't think that was the perception in the community.
No, it wasn't always. I was very fortunate. The day I received smicha was a week earlier than I expected. I took my bechina early. And so I drove straight to my father's office. My father was in real estate. And I showed up at the office and I interrupted a meeting. And my father introduced me to the other businessman. He says, this is my son. He's studying to be a rabbi. And I told my father, well, actually, I just became one. And I looked at the other gentleman and I said, I'm the black sheep. And my father said, no, you're not the black sheep. You're the white sheep. And we're very proud. So I was fortunate as well. But it was, you are correct. There were people, the old saying of those who can do, those who can't do, teach, and those who can't teach teachers. Those were normally the approaches that we grew up with.
Right.
Can I go back to your Cleveland days for a minute?
Sure.
You went to the real Mosheva.
I went to one of those. 1966, 1969. Moshe Kushner Zichrono Livracha was my Rosh Baruch in 69.
Third period or second period?
Erwin Pollack was my Madrid.
Yes, Moshe was my Rosh Baruch and Erwin Pollack was my Skan.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, yes, no, okay. Do you remember those years at all?
I vividly remember. They were wonderful years. A very good friend of mine who grew up in my father's Zichrono Livracha shul, who was just a few months younger than I, was Alan Green.
Oh,
who
okay.
became head of Bnei Akiva Olami, right?
Yes, and Alan Green, you may not know this, but you may. Alan just retired. He lives on Kibbutz Rosh Tzurim. We're still good friends. But Alan was the one in the Jewish agency who used to open up the letters from rabbis that attested to people's Jewishness.
I did not know that.
Yes, so I used to sometimes, when people would ask me to write a note to attest to their Jewishness, every so often I put a Post-it note in. Hi, Alan.
I would have done the same. Okay.
Yeah. So,
He never told me.
Okay.
He used to have an aunt here. She did. His wife had an aunt, and they would come every once in a while to LA.
Oh yeah, Sharon. Okay, good. I get to see them because my brother-in-law and sister-in-law live on Kibbutz with them. So whenever we go visit them, we get to see the Greens as well. So those were good old days for all of us. I of course, as you know, are much younger than you. So my first year was
You're dreaming, Rabbi.
Well, okay, but 1969 was my first year at Moshe. You made it before me. Okay, right. Very good. And in terms of other things that are on our agenda, technology, we would have never been able to do this before. When life returns to normal, and it will return to normal, do you think we're still going to be doing these kinds of programming, the online?
I think so. I think I gave a Gemara shir last night on my Tuesday night Gemara shir. Now people are staying home. They're Zooming in. The shir has expanded because people don't have to, you don't have to come out. You can learn. I see the future. And we weren't doing this before COVID. If you wanted to come to the Gemara shir, you came to the Gemara shir. You came down to shul. You really showed devotion and you drove down on a Tuesday evening to learn. Today, I'm in my study right here in this room where we're talking from, and everybody's in their room. And, it has increased the participation double. We just finished actually last night, Moed Katan. We're starting Masechtas Tanis next week. And I think it's only going to grow.
I had a fun experience. I give a Navi shir on Sunday mornings, and a couple who came to the shir for years made Aliyah, and they still come to shir now.
There you go,
Israel. So
right.
Luckily, it's a morning shir. They can do 8 hours later. But
that's right. And we do podcasts now that we weren't doing before, and we're doing I do a chapter of the week in the Navi. We're now learning Sefer Shoftim, and that goes all over. And people, every morning, my wife and I take a 5:0 walk, a 50-minute walk through the community for exercise when I come home from Minyan. And a lady sees us and screams across and she says, "I'm listening to you right now."
But it made it harder for rabbis. In other words, there's more than I find myself doing more than I used to do just to try to keep those connections going. And I can only imagine when it goes back live, where it's going to be a hybrid, it's going to up the ante once more. Are we up to it?
I think so. I think technology is going to be a wonderful means for us to expand our reach. And I think that COVID has helped that occur. So those are the positives,
No,
and again,
I will leave the positives for our conversation tonight. For those who want to see the conversation, I'm sure it's on the YIC website. It's yicc.org.
That's correct.
Okay, so you'll find it. It's tonight, Chicago time. I think it's 9:30 Chicago time. So if pull up a cup of hot chocolate, and Rabbi Muskin, in that case, will be leading the conversation. I'm trying to avoid COVID because I don't want to touch on those topics as well. But in terms of other things, by the way, just people should know, Rabbi Muskin's daughters are in leading roles. Some of you know from KINS that every year we do something specifically for those who have had problems having children. That's one of his daughters. His son-in-law is now the head of school at Shalhevet in LA. He's got a lot of nachas. He's got a lot of wonderful things going on. But it's really a testament to all you've accomplished in your community, that you're able to have a family that are leaders, that you came from a family of leaders, and you continue to lead us so proudly. We're so thrilled to have you as part of that community of Rabbonim that make a difference. But let me switch completely. If you had to do one thing different, what would you do different about the shul that you didn't do before? Is there something you would want to change in your shul?
That's a great question. I haven't thought of it in those terms. I think, because of my age, I am not tech savvy. And I think that has held me back to a certain degree. But though my associate is, and I use his talents considerably. But, if I could, I would like to know our reach should be more with tech savviness, with
just that your minyanim, the minyanim you have. For instance, when you first, YIC was smaller when you first came.
It was a very small shul.
Very small shul. It was 1 million, I assume.
Not even. It was less than. We had less than 50 families on a membership list. That's a whole different story.
Okay. So, but then part of the challenge is nowadays in our larger shuls that people sometimes turn to the small little shuls because they like to be able to get an aliyah all the time, or they like.
We have multiple minyanim in the shul today.
Are they different flavor minyanim? Are they?
Yes, every minyan is a little different. I think it's happening across it happens in your shul too.
Yeah, but is that good? Is that good or just the reality?
That's the reality. There is good and there's bad. Clearly, there's good and there's bad. There is a lack of sense of a unity with all of the minyanim because they don't come together that often. And, if you're davening in one minyan, you might very well not know the people in the other minyanim. That's the reality. On a Shabbos morning, we have a hashkama. We have the main minyan. It was called because it's in the main sanctuary. Then you have a 9:15 young couples, young professionals, whatever you want to call it, minyan. And then you have the library minyan at 9:30. So you have 4 minyanim plus a teen minyan. So you have 5 minyanim going on a Shabbos morning. And that's a lot of minyanim to keep, keep pace. Yeah.
Do you appear at all of them?
No, I try to rotate. It's almost impossible to be Shabbos at all of the minyanim. Right. So I try to rotate.
And nowadays we have because of COVID, so we have 4 minyanim 5 minyanim every Shabbos, and I speak at 3 of them.
On a Shabbos morning, wow!
Which has been an interesting experience of getting to 1 minyan, then running to the next one, making sure.
What I do is I do a 5-week cycle. So once in 5 weeks, I'm at each of these 5 different minyanim.
Wonderful. Yeah. Rabbi Muskin, our time really is up. This has been a pleasure.
Mine.
I'm speaking to a good friend, and I thank you for joining us. For anyone who goes out to LA, one of the other things that's great about Rabbi Muskin Shul is there are 2 hotels right around the corner. So it's the place to go. not only because it's a great shul with a great Rav, and one of the members I know is really great, but also because it's a place where people can come together from all over the country when they're visiting LA. Rabbi, thank you so very much for your time.
My honor.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate it. Have a
Call
great day. Call too. Bye-bye.
to.